From the Crypts of Memory. Eons of eons ago, in an epoch whose marvellous worlds have crumbled, and whose mighty suns are less than shadow, I dwelt in a star whose course, decadent from the high, irremeable heavens of the past, was even then verging upon the abyss in which, said astronomers, its immemorial cycle should find a dark and disastrous close. Ah! Strange was that gulf-forgotten star, how stranger than any dream of dreamers in the spheres of today, or than any vision that hath soared upon visionaries in their retrospection of the sidereal past. There, through cycles of a history whose piled and bronze-writ records were hopeless of tabulation, the dead had come to outnumber infinitely the living, and built of a stone that was indestructible save in the furnace of suns, their cities rose beside those of the living like the prodigious metropole of Titans, with walls that overgloomed the vicinal villages. And over all was the black funereal vault of the cryptic heavens, a dome of infinite shadows, where the dismal sun, suspended like a sole enormous lamp, failed to illumine, and drawing back its fires from the face of the irresolvable ether, threw a baffled and despairing beam on the vague remote horizons, and shrouded vistas illimitable of the visionary land. We were a sombre, secret, many-sorrowed people, we who dwelt beneath that sky of eternal twilight, pierced by the towering tombs and obelisks of the past. In our blood was the chill of the ancient night of time, and our pulses flagged with the creeping prescience of the lentor of Lethe. Over our courts and fields, like invisible sluggish vampires born of mausoleums, rose and hovered the black hours, with wings that distilled a malefic languor made from the shadowy woe and despair of perished cycles. The very skies were fraught with oppression, and we breathed beneath them as in a sepulchre, forever sealed with all its stagnancies of corruption and slow decay, and darkness impenetrable, save to the fretting worm. Vaguely we lived and loved as in dreams, the dim and mystic dreams that hover upon the verge of fathomless sleep. We felt for our women, with their pale and spectral beauty, the same desire that the dead may feel for the phantom lilies of Hadean meads. Our days were spent in roaming through the ruins of lone and immemorial cities, whose palaces of fretted copper and streets that ran between lines of carven golden obelisks lay dim and ghastly with the dead light, or were drowned forever in seas of stagnant shadow. Cities whose vast and iron-builded fanes preserved their gloom of primordial mystery and awe, from which the simulacra of century-forgotten gods looked forth with unalterable eyes to the hopeless heavens, and saw the ulterior night, the ultimate oblivion. Languidly we kept our gardens, whose grey lilies concealed a necromantic perfume that had power to evoke for us the dead and spectral dreams of the past. Or, wandering through ashen fields of perennial autumn, we sought the rare and mystic immortelles, with sombre leaves and pallid petals that bloomed beneath willows of wan and veil-like foliage, or wept with the sweet and nepenthe-laden dew by the flowing silence of Acherontic waters. And one by one we died, and were lost in the dust of accumulated time. We knew the years as a passing of shadows, and death itself as the yielding of twilight into night. The Flower Devil. In a basin of porphyry, at the summit of a pillar of serpentine, the thing has existed from primeval time in the garden of the kings that rule an equatorial realm of the planet Saturn. With black foliage, fine and intricate as the web of some enormous spider, with petals of livid rose, and purple like the purple of putrefying flesh, and a stem rising like a swart and hairy wrist from a bulb so old, so encrusted with the growth of centuries, that it resembles an urn of stone. The monstrous flower holds dominion over all the garden. In this flower, from the years of the oldest legend, an evil demon has dwelt, a demon whose name and whose nativity are known to the superior magicians and mysteriarchs of the kingdom, but to none other. Over the half-animate flowers, the ophidian orchids that coil and sting, the bat-like lilies that open their ribbed petals by night, and fasten with tiny yellow teeth on the bodies of sleeping dragonflies, the carnivorous cacti that yawn with green lips beneath their beards of poisonous yellow prickles, the plants that palpitate like hearts, the blossoms that pant with a breath of venomous perfume. Over all these, the flower devil is supreme, in its malign immortality and evil perverse intelligence, inciting them to strange maleficence, fantastic mischief, even to acts of rebellion against the gardeners, who proceed about their duties with wariness and trepidation, since more than one of them has been bitten, even unto death, by some vicious and venefic flower. In places the garden has run wild from lack of care on the part of the fearful gardeners, and has become a monstrous tangle of serpentine creepers and hydra-headed plants, convolved and interwrithing in lethal hate or venomous love, and horrible as a rout of wrangling vipers and pythons. And, like his innumerable ancestors before him, the king dares not destroy the flower, for fear that the devil, driven from its habitation, might seek a new home, and enter into the brain or body of one of the king's subjects, or even the heart of his fairest and gentlest and most beloved queen. The Black Lake. In a land where weirdness and mystery had strongly leagued themselves with eternal desolation, the lake was outpoured at an undiscoverable date of elder eons, to fill some fathomless gulf far down amid the shadows of snowless volcanic mountains. No eye, not even the sun's, when he stared vertically upon it for a few hours at midday, seemed able to divine its depths of sullen blackness and unrippled silence. It was for this reason that I found a so singular pleasure in frequently contemplating the strange lake. Sitting for I knew not how long on its bleak basaltic shores, where grew but a few fleshly red orchids, bent above the waters like open and thirsty mouths, I would peer with countless fantastic conjectures and shadowy imaginings into the alluring mystery of its unknown and inexplorable gulf. It was at an hour of morning before the sun had surmounted the rough and broken rim of the summits when I first came, and clomb down through the shadows which filled, like some subtler fluid, the volcanic basin. Seen at the bottom of that stirless tincture of air and twilight, the lake seemed as dregs of darkness. Peering for the first time, after the deep and difficult descent into the so dull and leaden waters, I was at length aware of certain small and scattered gleams of silver, apparently far beneath the surface, and fancying them the metal in some mysterious ledge, or the glints of long-sunken treasure, I bent closer in my eagerness, and finally perceived that what I saw was but the reflection of the stars, which, though the day was full upon the mountains and the lands without, were yet visible in the depth and darkness of that enshadowed place.